Unless they're a superhuman alien from another planet, regression is inevitable for every NFL player. So, once again, we take a look at the current NFL landscape and predict who's going to be on the decline this year. In this video last year, we correctly projected the declines of Patrick Peterson, Vic Beasley, Julian Edelman, Ryan Kerrigan, and Jamie Collins. However, we were admittedly wrong about Stefon Diggs, Kirk Cousins, Melvin Gordon, and Rob Gronkowski. As for Austin Hooper, well, let's call him a draw. How will we fare this time around? You can let us know in the comment section throughout the season. So, with that being said, let's get right into it. Here's our 2021 edition of the 10 NFL stars we expect to suck this season. Ben Roethlisberger. In the first half of last season, Roethlisberger often looked like his old self, and certainly not a 38-year-old who was coming off a career-threatening elbow injury. But Big Ben's physical limitations and age finally caught up to him in the final stretch of the season, when the Steelers lost 4 of their final 5 before bowing out to the Cleveland Browns in the wild-card round. Roethlisberger can work as a game manager at this phase of his career, but the Steelers can't really rely on him to throw for 300-plus yards a game anymore. His arm strength just isn't the same. Sure, he has a nice set of playmakers in Deontay Johnson, Chase Claypool, Juju Smith-Schuster, and promising rookie running back Najee Harris. But the Steelers also lost 3 starters from their offensive line, including future Hall of Famer Marquise Pouncey. Not sure how a 39-year-old Roethlisberger is expected to bounce back with worse pass protection. This almost definitely feels like his last season in the NFL. And given his lack of mobility, it may not be a pretty one. Saquon Barkley. The prized New York Giants running back suffered an ACL tear in Week 2 of last season, but his recovery hasn't gone as quickly as hoped, and Barkley might not even be ready for the start of the year. The Giants would be wise to ease Barkley back into it, considering the injuries he's dealt with over the last 2 years. The thing is, it's not hard to envision Barkley being less speedy and explosive, at least for the first few games he plays. It's gonna take some time to get back into the groove. Not only that, but Barkley has the misfortunes of playing behind one of the NFL's worst offensive lines. Not that the unit was great in his dazzling 2018 rookie year, but certainly not as awful as his current group. If Daniel Jones cannot break out in year 3, defenses will be smart and stack the box so Barkley can't beat them. He's got a long hill to climb to reach the status of elite NFL running backs again, to say the least. J.J. Watt. Injuries and age have unfortunately caught up to Watt, who's been out of the NFL's best defensive player conversation for a while now. After he was released by the Houston Texans, Watt landed a rather generous 2-year deal worth $28 million from the Arizona Cardinals. Not sure if the Redbirds noticed, but Watt wasn't exactly a star in 2020. He missed all but 3 games in 2016, 11 in 2017, and 8 in 2019. Last year, Watt recorded just 5 sacks. His run defense remains strong and all, but this guy just isn't the same game wrecker that terrorized defenses for the better part of 7 years. Watt also just had 4 sacks in 2019 when he appeared in 8 games. So he would have likely failed to hit double digits even if he played in all 16. And it's worth noting that he had 0 sacks in the 5 games he played in 2017 too. In other words, Watt has only had 1 healthy productive season over the last 4 years. Being on the wrong side of 30 and injury prone, it's just hard to imagine Watt fully living up to that pricey deal the Cardinals signed him to. The idea of a Watt-Chandler Jones pass rushing duo seems so enticing and all, but while Jones remains one of the game's elite sack artists, Watt simply isn't in that tier anymore. So Cardinals fans should keep the expectations reasonable. Even with the extended regular season schedule, double-digit sacks feels like a long shot for Watt at this stage of his career. Bud Dupree. The Tennessee Titans were desperate to fix their horrible pass rush, so they handed former Pittsburgh Steelers standout Bud Dupree a giant 5-year deal worth $82.5 million. Sure, the dude had 8 sacks in 11 games last season and a career-high 11.5 in 2019. but Dupree doesn't offer a whole lot outside of that. And the thing you folks need to remember is that he played on a star-studded Pittsburgh D that had 3 other big-time pass rushers in TJ Watt, Cameron Hayward, and Stephon Tuitt. Easy for Dupree to rack up the sacks when the opposition has so many stars to focus on shutting down. The Titans' pass rush, on the other hand, is not on the same level as the Steelers. Tennessee has no one even remotely close to the likes of Watt, Tuitt, or Hayward. So it's hard to see how Dupree can merely go from the number 4 pass rusher on an elite defense to a Pro Bowl caliber defender on a defense with a lot of holes. Even if Dupree hits 10 sacks, that doesn't fully justify his hefty salary. For what the Titans are paying, they'll also need Dupree to produce a good amount of turnovers and quality run defense. All that is easier said than done. Antonio Brown. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers put up with the PR backlash and brought in the troubled wideout. Fair or not, Brown produced aplenty in the Bucs Super Bowl 55 championship season, especially during the playoffs. But it's not hard to forget that Brown was nothing special during the regular season. He only averaged 10.7 yards per catch, the second lowest mark of his career, and 60.4 yards per game. Yes, he had to fight with Mike Evans and Chris Godwin for reps, but Brown used to terrorize defensive backs with his sublime route running and incredible speed. Now that he's spent some time away from the league and is getting older, it just doesn't seem like he has that extra gear anymore. It took Brady a while to get on the same page as all of his receivers, so you can expect the connections with Evans, Godwin, Rob Gronkowski, and Scotty Miller to be even smoother this year. That might mean less targets for Brown. And judging by his past behavior, how do we know he'll be a good team player if Brady doesn't throw him the ball enough? Some people are already forgiving Brown and firmly believe that he'll regain his Pro Bowl form in 2021. Don't buy it. Last year was a short renaissance. Regression will come to the mercurial wideout this upcoming season. Jason Pierre-Paul. As much as we expect Brown to decline in 2020, we're just as confident that one of his high-profile teammates will also experience regression. At first glance, we sound crazy. JPP had 9.5 sacks last season, and he earned his first Pro Bowl nod since 2012, and he had a career-high 4 forced fumbles. You see, folks, that's great and all, but was this vintage JPP, or more so just a year where everything clicked for him and the Bucs? Pierre-Paul probably won't match his 4 forced fumbles, and those 6 passes defended, that was his highest mark in the past 4 years. So you can probably expect that number to drop as well. Also, Pierre-Paul had a solid but not great Pro Football Focus rating of 69.2 in 2020. Asking a player who's now 32 years of age to repeat that type of season may be too much. This isn't to say JPP can't play anymore, but we're warning you about placing the lofty expectations of another Pro Bowl season over his head. Everything went his way last season, but now it's time to come back down to earth. Kenny Golladay. The Giants signed Golladay to a massive 4-year deal worth $72 million in free agency. Golladay, a 2-time 1,000-yard wideout, led the NFL with 11 touchdown receptions in 2019. But regression is going to happen for 2 obvious reasons. One, he's going from Matthew Stafford to Daniel Jones. And secondly, he's not a lock to be a top 3 target in this offense. The Giants also have Saquon Barkley, wideouts Sterling Shepard, Darius Slayton, and Kadarius Toney, and tight ends Evan Ingram and Kyle Rudolph. So how's Golladay supposed to play like a star when he's playing with one of the NFL's most mistake-prone quarterbacks, and he has so many other guys to compete with for targets? There's a lot to like about Galladay's game, but the Giants are not the right team to maximize his skill set. The contract felt like an overpay from the get-go, and it may not be long until the Giants feel buyer's remorse. Golladay has plenty of hurdles to overcome if he's to regain his 1,000-yard Pro Bowl form again. Stephon Gilmore. The 2019 Defensive Player of the Year may have earned his 4th Pro Bowl nod, but it wasn't exactly his best individual season. Gilmore suffered a season-ending quad injury last year and was limited to 11 contests. Gilmore had just 1 pick and 3 passes defended, a year after recording 6 and 20 in those 2 categories respectively. Gilmore was also far less dominant in coverage, allowing a 57.1 completion percentage when targeted, according to Pro Football Reference. That number was 50.7% in 2019, in case you were wondering. So here's Gilmore entering his age 31 season, coming off a serious injury and a somewhat down year for his standards. The Patriots will probably use Jonathan Jones and J.C. Jackson more than Gilmore when it comes to the tough receiver assignments. Also, Gilmore has made it clear that he isn't happy with his contract situation. What if the Patriots deal him ahead of the deadline? There's no guarantee that Gilmore continues his high level of play outside of New England, where he's had the luxury of playing for one of the best defensive coaches ever in Bill Belichick. Age, injuries, and a down 2020 season lead us to the conclusion that Gilmore will no longer be an elite corner in 2021. The regression is on. Michael Thomas. Thomas's 2020 season was a waste because of injuries. He only suited up in 7 contests and simply wasn't his usual dominant self in those games. Thomas didn't even have a touchdown in the regular season. The retirement of Drew Brees essentially guarantees that Thomas will decline in 2021. Then in July, it was revealed that he underwent ankle surgery and stands to miss multiple regular season games. Throw in the rocky relationship Thomas has with his teammates and coaches, and now it's really hard to be optimistic about Can't Guard Mike regaining that 2019 Offensive Player of the Year form. Even if they make amends and if he comes back fully healthy, how do we know if Thomas will be on the same page as Jameis Winston and Taysom Hill? With Emmanuel Sanders and Jared Cook gone, Thomas doesn't have those valuable sidekicks in the passing game. It'll be easier for defenses to focus entirely on shutting him down. This isn't to say that Thomas is already way past his prime and won't be elite again, but the stars aren't aligning for a bounce back year in 2021. Let's wait at least another season or two when he's fully healthy and in sync with whoever his next QB, coach, and team are. Joe Mixon. A foot injury limited the Cincinnati Bengals running back to 6 games last season. Even before the injury, however, Mixon simply doesn't look like the guy who crossed 1,000 rushing yards in both 2018 and 2019. Though he was on pace for over 1,000 yards again before his injury, Mixon averaged just 3.5 yards per carry. But it's mostly the state of the Bengals O-line that lands him on this list. The front office passed on generational offensive lineman prospect Penei Sewell, instead taking Jamar Chase with the number 5 pick. That leaves Jonah Williams as the only reliable piece on that O-line. Quentin Spain and Michael Jordan just don't cut it at guard. Trey Hopkins is a replacement-level center. Riley Reif had a good situation in Minnesota, but we're skeptical of him producing similar results in Cincinnati. As much as it sucks, we're expecting Joe Burrow to once again face more pressure than he deserves. And it's gonna be difficult for Mixon to put up another Pro Bowl season when his O-line is in such a state of disarray. So yeah, buyer beware on Mixon, fantasy owners. But which other NFL players do you expect to suck this season? Join us in the comment section below. If you like this video and learned a thing or two, clicking the like button helps out a ton. And hey, we appreciate it. If this is your first time coming around to TPS though, subscribing is a great idea because we put out videos like this every single day. But as always, thanks for watching and we'll see you guys next time.